I'm
Yeah.
not below anyone and I'm not above anyone. But thank you very much. I appreciate being asked.
Amen to that, and thank you.
No, not amen, not amen, a
You're
women.
gonna say a woman. I knew it. I was like, wait, that's coming. The Perspective View podcast by CC America LLC is a show dedicated to discussing diversity, culture, and context beyond the boardroom. DEI today is more than a buzzword on a billboard. It is creating safe spaces for varying perspectives, ideas, and experiences without fear of being canceled because you don't conform. Let's tear down the walls together and build a new foundation with an open mind and understanding that the world revolves around the context of perspective. Welcome to the Perspective View podcast, and I am so excited to welcome back to the show Cousin Jane Elliott. So if you are not familiar with Cousin Jane, there's a reason why I say that. A year ago this month, we had the opportunity to interview Cousin Jane in the podcast episode titled One Race, which is Jane Elliott's mission. So before we get started, Cousin Jane, welcome back. And can you reintroduce yourself to any of our listeners who may not know your work and or your story?
I'm the teacher who, with her third graders, the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, separated them on their permission because they wanted to do it according to eye color, so that the people who had the wrong color eyes would find out how it feels to be other than what we call white in the United States of America. And I learned so many things from that people picked it up and are using the film that was made to the next group that went through the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise all over the world to teach about racism.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to give you your flowers again and thank you for the work that you've done and educating us and opening our eyes.
Wait, before you go any farther, do not thank a melanemic woman for doing something for 55 years that you have done all your life, and your mother did all her life, and your grandmother did all her life. You had to teach about and learn about racism firsthand, and you had no choice but to learn it. I'd had a choice, and I made the choice of deciding to teach about it and learn about it. I've learned more than I wanted to know, but one of the main things that came out of that exercise is the day that blue-eyed kids were on the bottom, I heard the boys talking about what they were going to do to the brownies when the blueies got on top. Then on Monday, when we reversed the exercise, I hated to go back to school because I thought, all hell's going to break loose here and I don't know how I'm going to handle it. I walked in, we reversed the exercise, blue-eyed people were on the top. Blue-eyed people were much less vicious to the Browns than the Browns had been to them. And on Tuesday, when we talked about the whole thing in the magic circle, I said to those kids, you blue-eyed boys said you were going to get even. You didn't get even. Why didn't you get even? And almost in unison, they said, because we found out how it feels to be on the bottom, and we didn't want to make anybody feel the way we felt when we were on the bottom. Now, if pasty white males who are afraid that they're going to be treated when people of color and women get on the top, that they're going to be treated the way we have been treated by them, they're afraid of that. They don't need to be afraid of that. I don't want to get even with men, and I don't think most people of color want to get even with so-called white folks. I want to get equitable treatment under the law, and I want to stop calling people white and black. Those two terms came out of the Spanish Inquisition, and they were made up by a man who figured out finally, after he had killed 2,000 people, that you can't tell what a person's religion is by looking at them. So he gave lighter colored brown people the name white, because white is the color of purity and goodness. He gave darker brown people the name black, because black is the color of savagery and evil. And he set us upon a mission in which we will be at polar opposites for as long as we call ourselves white and black. We've got to get rid of white and black. We've got to get rid of red and yellow. Those skin colors do not exist in the human race. We are all shades of brown, and we've got to get that into people's heads and stop operating and stop talking the way they did during the Spanish Inquisition. If men are going to continue to behave the way they did during the Spanish Inquisition, then they're all going to have to come to work in knee breeches and powdered wigs, and women are all going to have to wear dresses with their waists cinched so tightly that their waist is no more than 18 inches around. They're going to have to give up television, telephones, automobiles, and motorcycles. All those things are going to have to go. If you're going to use the language of the 1500s, then use the means of transportation, communication, and dress that they used during the 1500s. If you don't choose to do that, go along and get along.
Oh, that's powerful. Thank you
Yep,
for
wait,
saying
wait,
that.
wait, wait. There's one more thing you have to know. The word race, to mean a specific group of people, came out of France in 1580. That's the first time the word race was used to mean a specific group of people. So when people say to you, it's been going on forever, you need to say, no, it hasn't. It has been going on for less than 500 years. Let's give it up.
Wow. And so just know that I appreciate that perspective, because a lot of times, to the point that you've made, we associate connotations or we make assumptions because of the century in which we live in. So we accept what we've heard, not realizing the full history. So I appreciate you sharing that, and also sharing the fact that, to your point, you don't want to get even. I can tell you, I personally don't want to get even. And I know a lot of other people who don't want to get even. We just want to be treated equitably. So I really appreciate you highlighting that.
And if you didn't know about the Spanish Inquisition and you didn't know where the word race came from, you might think it has been going on forever, but it hasn't. People need to realize that that right now we're in a bad situation right now, because the Christian nationalists are trying to put religion in the schools. They want the 3 R's to be reading, writing, and religion. No, this is not what we want. Our founding fathers, because they had smart mothers, told us that we need to keep religion, we need to have church and state separated. We need to keep it that way. It is absolutely essential that we do that. So when you these are the most dangerous times I've ever lived in. And I lived through the Second World War. I was born in 1933. So I watched what Hitler did from 1933 till 1945. And right now, in the last 7 years, 10 years, the last 10 years, I have watched what Hitler did being done by Donald Trump. Let me read this to you, just so that you'll know that I don't make this stuff up because I'm not smart enough. In the book, When at Times the Mob is Swayed, it says, it shouldn't come as a surprise that Trump is so adept at exploiting fear and inventing scapegoats. He studied at the feet of the master. We know from Ivana Trump's now sealed testimony at Trump's first divorce trial, backed up by her lawyer, and by Donald Trump himself, younger Trump slept with a book of Adolf Hitler's collected political speeches, published in 1941 as My New Order, in a locked cabinet at his bedside. Ugly and appalling as they are, those speeches are masterpieces of demagogic manipulation. Did you know about that?
I was not aware.
See, you've got to get this book. And if you don't want to go to the library, check this book out and just read page 20 and 21. And all of a sudden you'll realize why this man is acting this way, and why somebody like me, who remembers when Hitler came to power, sees Hitler coming to power again, but with a different name.
Wow. That is enlightening and insightful. And who wrote that book, When at Times the Mob was Swayed?
Bert Newborn.
Bert Newborn. Okay.
See it?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Get that book and read it, people. Anytime anybody says to you, well, wait a minute, you need to say, look, people, there are three things that, if we don't get time for the rest of them, there are three things we have to say. Number one, without blacks, there would be no whites. All white people is people who were black to begin with. Their ancestors back all those many years ago were black. But as those brilliant people moved to populate every landmass on the face of the earth, they got farther and farther from their equator, so their bodies produced less and less melanin. So their skin and their eyes and their hair got lighter. They didn't get dumber, they didn't get smarter, they just got lighter. So the only reason I am this color, and I'm not white, I'm brown, I'm light brown. The only reason I'm this color is because my ancient ancestors came from a country on the continent of Africa. So without blacks, we would have no whites. We could remember that, we could get rid of racism. Number two, without Jews, we would have no Christians. The word Christian comes from the word Jesus Christ. It is named after Jesus Christ, who was an Ethiopian Jew. And according to the Bible, he had kinky, woolly hair and feet of bronze. So it's about time for us to change the picture behind the minister in your churches to say, have it look like Jesus instead of look like someone that we white people are willing to bow to. Number 3, without women, there would be no men. Now, I know that men hearing that are going to say, well, you couldn't have a baby without me. Oh, yes, we could. And women probably did that for years, because you can put 2 female mammal eggs together in a petri dish, break down the cell wall, and come up with another female mammal. They've done it in the laboratories over and over and over. That's how women came to be. And that's probably the first human beings, modern human beings that evolved, were female. And probably the first male came about as a result of a mutation of the genes. Now, I like mutants. I was married to a mutant for 59 years, and I loved him for 60, and I've loved him ever since I lost him, and I miss him dreadfully. Oh, he's not here, but he was here for 60 years for me. Without females, there would be no males. We could get rid of racism, anti-Semitism, and sexism if we decided to. And that would give us more time to deal with all those other ignorant isms that we put together. Race is not a social construct. It is a damned lie. And it came up in the 1500s. It's time to get over it.
That's fair. So you actually touched on the next question I have for you, which was, on what basis should people vote this year? You touched on a little bit of it in terms of like the information about Trump, but what would you say to that question? On what basis should people vote this year? Knowing what
they had better vote on the basis of, do you want to be led by a spoiled brat boy, or do you, who holds the Bible upside down and has never read it? Or do you want to be led by an older man who has been in government most of his life, who knows exactly what we need to do, and who is not sexist, who is not racist, who is not anti-Semitic. He is a sensible man who is old enough to know what he's talking about. And he was the vice president to Barack Obama. So he knows what Barack Obama went through. He knows what he has to avoid going through. He knows what has to be done to lead this country forward instead of taking it backward the way the evangelicals want to take us backward. You need, and if you haven't read the book, I know you're going to think all you do is read. Yeah, I have lots of time to read because nobody wants to talk to me because I burst into, well, don't you say make a racist comment in my mind. Everybody has to read the book, The Power Worshippers. Oh, my friends, you read The Power Worshippers and you will get such an education. It says, overcoming this kind of reactionary and authoritarian movement isn't just something Americans can do. It is what made Americans what we are. We don't want to be in an autocracy. We don't want to be in a theocracy. We want to be in a democracy. And right now, the scariest thing about this whole thing is we are on the verge of losing our democracy. We do not want that to happen, and you have to vote in such a way and take everybody you know who's old enough to vote, haul them to the polls, and make sure that everybody who is old enough to vote votes, and that they vote against a theocracy or an autocracy. So you have to vote for a democracy, and that means voting for a Democrat, and that means voting for Joe Biden.
So I appreciate your perspective with regard to that. So you highlighted the factors that you feel that people should consider when deciding how to vote. So considering the previous conversation that we had, and also how you started off this episode regarding one race, that we are one race. And I remember you said we are part of one race, the human race. So how do you think the current political landscape and the attacks on the fact that, to your point, with us being one race, the diversity efforts that people have put out there in an effort to promote equality, how do you think that influences voter decisions?
We have to realize that this is the most important year this country will ever know. This is it. If people don't go to the polls and vote for democracy, they will end up in an autocracy or a theocracy. I don't want to have my life dictated by somebody else's religion or even by my own religion. I want my life and my children and my grandchildren and my great grandchildren, I have all of those. I want their lives to be lived in a democracy. I want a place where we believe in what it says in the Constitution, except where it says that blacks are only 3/5 of a person. I want us to take, and that's been taken out of the Constitution, but I want my children and grandchildren and great grandchildren to live in a democracy that is not governed by somebody who governs because they have the money to do it, and they can buy their way into being the president. And I don't want somebody who thinks they can pray their way into being the president or can force other people to pray to a God. I think, and that's what the founding fathers said. We're going to have church. We're going to have separation of church and state in this country, and I want separation of church and state in this country. I want the words "under God" taken out of the pledge. They weren't there until 1954, when Dwight Eisenhower, President Dwight Eisenhower, allowed the Knights of Columbus to lobby their congressmen to get the words "under God" inserted into the pledge. So the year that I went back to teaching, they weren't there the first year I taught, but when I went back to teaching, here we had to say the words "under God" in the pledge. I said that for the first couple of years. And then after that, I said, look, people, if you don't want to say the words "under God" in the pledge, you don't have to. They don't belong there. Besides which, those fools put the words "under God" in the pledge just before the word "indivisible." When you put the words "under God" in the pledge, you divide the people who are saying the pledge into those who believe in our God or who don't believe in God at all. That divides you automatically, just as white and black divide us automatically. Then they also put the words "in God we trust" on our dollar bills, our lower denomination dollar bills. In God we trust those words do not belong on our money. If you trust in God, you don't need money. But if you have the power to put those words on our paper bills when we're supposed to have separation of church and state, you're misusing God. And we need to do something about that. When I was a junior in high school, I went down to the restaurant from the school to get a ride home with my dad. We lived 4.5 miles from town. I walked into the restaurant, and there's a sign on the wall, and it says, "In God we trust. All others pay cash." I looked at it and I started to laugh. And my dad said, "What's so funny?" I said, "Look at that sign." He said, "My God, that's right. You're right. That is comical." So people could, if they chose to be in trouble with the law, when you get a dollar bill that says "In God we trust" on it, underneath "In God we trust" in really tiny letters, put "All others pay cash." People have to be aware that those words were not on our money originally. That's when this nonsense, this Christian nationalism began a long time ago. We should have seen what was going on then and refused to put those words on our money. We should have refused to put the words "under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of America.
Definitely enlightening. These are things that I will be honest, I was not aware of. And to the I think we talked about that before. Like, we are taught certain things, and not all things, and that's why it's important for us to read. So I appreciate the fact that you're sharing the information and knowledge that you have, because there are a lot of people who say that their vote doesn't matter, or maybe they're on the fence. So what strategies do you suggest for getting more people out to vote?
Go do what Barack Obama did the first time he ran for the presidency. He lined up a bunch of young people in every state in the United States, and he took them to cities and towns and villages all over the country, and they went to people's homes and said, "We want to be sure that you're going to vote for Barack Obama, and we want to know what you want Barack Obama to do." They went to every little town. It was fantastic. They came to Osage, they came to Riceville, they came to St. Ansgar, they came to all these little towns, and they made their presence known, and they told us what Barack Obama, what his vision was for the United States of America. And he won, in spite of the Republicans in the Congress who didn't want him to win and did everything they could to keep that from happening. And then he got reelected. And the Republicans in Congress had said he'll never get reelected. He got reelected because he did it again. And he did good things while he was the president, as many as they would let him. But he was up against a real determined set of Republicans who did not want people to have this government led by a black man again. They're so dumb that they think people are black and white. They haven't realized there are no people the color of my shirt, and there are no people the color of the writing on my shirt. They do not exist. Human beings do not exist in black and white or red or yellow. We all exist in shades of brown. You and I are both shades of brown, because the first modern human beings that evolved on this earth evolved in sub-Saharan Africa, where they're exposed to tremendous amounts of sunlight, so their bodies produce a lot of melanin. Melanin is your body's reaction to the rays of the sun. It has nothing to do with being God's chosen children or God's hated children. Let's get over it. Did I answer your question?
You did.
Are you tired of me now? I'm
No,
sorry.
you are fine. You are fine, Cousin Jane. So you know what, for people who may not know why I call you Cousin Jane, why do you say that we are all related?
We are. We're all 30th to 50th cousins. If you trace your DNA back far enough, whoever you are going to find that a percentage of it came from a country on the continent of Africa, because we all came from the same place originally. So we are cousins. We are 30th to 50th cousins. You don't want to be my cousin? Well, that's too bad. Choose one. But you are my cousin, period. That's
it. Well, I appreciate it, Cousin Jane. So what advice do you have for the next generation of leaders, educators, influencers, and the like?
Do what my dad told us to do. Number one, get an education. But I don't mean indoctrination. I mean an education. Oh, there's a big difference between indoctrination, where you do not tell any of the things that I've said to you today. You didn't learn these things in school. You weren't allowed to learn these things in school. There is a set of facts that you're supposed to learn. And one of those facts is we must maintain racism, because racism is an extremely profitable venture. People make a huge amount of money by practicing racism. So we don't talk about it. And we don't talk. And when we teach the truth about the past, somebody comes along. Right now, this is what the Christian nationalists are doing. Do not tell the past, because it just makes white children feel guilty. It doesn't make white children feel guilty. It should make children of all shades of brown feel responsible for behaving and legislating in ways today that we will not mistake the mistakes of the past. We will not repeat the mistakes of the past. Those who forget the mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat them. And if you never learn about them, you are doomed to repeat them, because you don't know any better. But if you know where white and black came from, if you know where Christianity came from, if you know that it came from the Jews, and you know that the Jews are still being punished because they aren't Christians, and yet they are the parents of Christianity, then if you know those things, you have to say to yourself, there's something very wrong here, and we got to put a stop to this. If you know by looking around you that women are not inferior to men, that we do not have to go around behind our husbands and picking up after them and being blessed by them and hoping that we have another child every year, if you realize that that is not in the Bible, that is not in the Bible, that is not in the Constitution, if we would teach the truth so that children today would know the truth about the past, would behave in the present in a way that will make it for a better future. The reason for educating people, truly educating them, is so that they will behave in the present, that they will make a better future. That's what we're striving for, not to repeat the mistakes of the past, to see to it that they aren't repeated, and see to it that we have a better future, because we're doing better things in the present than we ever did in the past. And racism is not the number one problem in this country. The number one problem in this country is self-imposed ignorance. The information is out there. My dad used to say to us, "Get a book, goddammit." And he'd look at me like, "Correct me now. Just try it. What you put in your head, they can't take away from you." That's so true. I say to people, get a book, goddammit. Get a book and read it. And it doesn't have to be the Bible. It has to be all the books that are written, that are listed on the bibliography on my website. Go to janeelliott.com. Download the printed learning materials. The first is a set of typical statements that white folks make that think they aren't racist. The second is a set of clarifications of those statements, how those are received by people about whom they're being said. The third page is a set of commitments to combat racism, things you can do in your own environment to deal with your own racism. And the fourth is a bibliography. Download those printed materials. I didn't make them up. I got them out of another book. Get a book. Turn off your television. Put down your cell phone. Pick up a book. And insist that your children, your husband, yourself, your lover, your whatever it is in your home sits for half an hour at least every day and doing sustained silent reading. Just sit there and read a book. And if you read one of the books that I pointed out to you just now, you won't stop at half an hour. You won't stop until you've read the whole thing, because they are so full of information that we need and that is withheld from us unless we can afford to buy the books or have the time to go to the library and get a library card and borrow them there. I buy them because I want them in my presence.
That is fair.
Oh yeah, and the reason I buy them is because I mark them up. I underline stuff in every one of these books, and I can pick up the book and see where the pages are turned down, and then read that, and then get reinvigorated in the idea that there's only one race of people on the face of the earth. Our ancestors all came from the same place. we don't have to worship, but we do have to have separation of church and state. I consider those all facts. Is there anything else I can, if you ask me another question, I'm going to go into another speech.
You know what? It's fine. I appreciate you sharing your perspective. And that's what this show is about. It's about sharing your perspective, because I feel like we live in this culture of canceling people. And it's like, how can you cancel who you didn't create? So I think that the whole cancel culture thing, the fact that people cannot share and or hear other perspectives, is interesting, to say the least. And so I wanted to create a platform where people can hear and listen and at least try to understand the other perspectives, and then also be able to change people's perspectives. So to the point that you made, when we educate ourselves, when we learn more, we do better. And when we learn our history, we don't repeat the same mistakes. But a lot of people actually don't even want that history taught at all.
But you have to remember, I had an argument with a college professor here 2 weeks ago in my home, and she said, our black is our culture. I said, no, black isn't your culture. Black is your color, and you are confusing color and culture, because you aren't black. You can call yourself black until hell freezes over, but you are not black any more than I am white. I'm not white. You're not black. We're both shades of brown, because we both came from the same place. Our culture is different because our cultures developed in different places. The culture in Ireland, which is where my not so ancient ancestors came from, is very different from the culture in Sweden, or the culture in Africa, or the culture in Peru, because culture and color are not the same thing. Your color is determined by your body's response to the natural environment. Your culture is determined by your background, by the people who raised you, and by the people with whom you have been a family for all your life, for thousands of years.
That is fair. And it is true. Words they definitely matter. And
words wait a minute. Words are the most powerful weapon devised by humankind. We use them to kill people every day of the week. So you have to be careful. We have to stop using the words of the 15th century. Never, ever call somebody biracial unless they have at least one parent who came from outer space. And when somebody says to me, I have a biracial child, I say, really? Is your husband from outer space? Which planet did your husband go? Mrs. Elliott, that's not funny. I'm not being funny. You're telling me that your child isn't from this planet, because there's only one race on this planet, so you can't have a biracial child. You may have a mosaic child. A mosaic is an art form that is new and beautiful and unique and made of many elements.
I like that.
Biracial children are not biracial. They are mosaic. They are new, unique, beautiful, and made of many elements. Let's put the word mosaic into our vocabulary, and let's take out white and black when we describe people, and instead use melanemic, which means you don't have much melanin, melanaceous, which means you have more melanin, melanotic, which means you have a lot of melanin, and melanaceous, melanemic, and melanotic are in the dictionary. Before I die, the word melanaceous is going to be in the dictionary, because it says I have a medium amount of melanin in my system. If I am melanemic, I don't have much melanin in my system. I'm probably going to die of melanotic cancer, which is how you do it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Melanoma. I'm probably going to die of melanoma because I don't have much melanin in my cells to protect my skin from the rays of the sun. And many melanemic people die of skin cancer because they don't have enough melanin in their skin to protect their cells from the damaging rays of the sun. Fewer melanaceous people die from melanoma. Very few people who are melanotic die of melanoma because they have a lot of melanin in their skin to protect themselves from the damaging rays of the sun. These three words are descriptive of what we are. They are not positive or negative. They are not polar opposites. They are descriptive of what we are. Those are words that are important. Okay?
That's fair.
Mosaic is an important word.
I like that.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's got to be used.
And I think the last question I have for you today is, when you think about your life and you think about the impact you've been able to make and the lessons you've been able to learn, what advice would you give your younger self today?
Shut up.
Tell us more about that. We have a few minutes left. What do you mean by that?
Every time I open my mouth, somebody wants to put their foot in it, because I am surrounded, even in the senior community in California, where everybody is liberal, right? No,
supposedly.
Yeah, it's so funny when they see me coming, they turn and go in the other direction, because they know that they're going to say something racist, and I'm going to say something anti-racist, and then the fit is going to hit the shan, and they know what's coming, so they stay away from me in droves. And I understand that. I understand that perfectly. But I do not have the right to refuse to tell the truth in order to make me comfortable. It says in the Bible, which I read, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set ye free. Can you imagine being free of racism? Can you imagine being free of anti-Semitism? Can you imagine being free of ageism or sexism? If we knew the truth about all these things, we could do away with those isms. We could do away with racism in 2 generations, because I did it with my 3rd graders. And here's what's funny. In August of this year, the people who were in the film, The Eye of the Storm, which was made in my classroom, the 2nd year I did the 3rd year I did the exercise, have invited me to come to their class reunion. And those people are 60. Yeah, those kids are 63 years old.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and they want me to come, and they'd be perfectly happy if I'd have a camera crew with me, so that they could make another film about those kids now, like they did when they met, I think, their 10-year class reunion all those years ago. So they have invited me, and I'm thinking, no, it made the kids who weren't in my class, those other 40 kids, really upset that film crew was there. In fact, one of them said to one of my former students, after she came back to the meeting after the lunch out at the park, and she said, "Well, Mrs. Elliott, it happened again." I said, "What happened, Sandy?" She said, "So and so sat across the table from me, and he said, why are they doing about a film about you guys? You were the dummy group. We were the smart ones." I said, "Oh, Sandy, I'm sorry." She said, "Don't worry, it didn't bother me. I learned things he didn't know, and he still doesn't know. He still doesn't know about race, Mrs. Elliott, and she is just floating on air, because here the genius of her graduating class didn't know 10 years after they graduated what she knew, and now she's looking forward, I think, to him coming back and try it again. Because I'd love to go, but I don't want to mess up their reunion. But I would love to send a film crew, because the film crew wants to be there. I'd love to send a film crew, and then they could visit with the kids without me there. That would be easier on everyone, because the rest of the people in that class, their teachers said to them, when my 3rd graders every year did I believe you learn by doing. So we did lots and lots of stuff. We were busy all the time. And the other 2 teachers' kids would come and stand and look in the room, and like, I wish we could do that. And they asked their teachers, why can't we do the things that Mrs. Elliott's kids are doing? And their teachers told them, because she has the dummy group. That's the only way those kids could learn. That's what they told their students. So here we go back to a reunion, and here comes Rex, who became a high school teacher, and here comes Raymond, who became a lawyer and is just retired recently from a law firm. And none of this was supposed to happen, you see, because they were the dummy group. You're lucky if you're dumb. Dumb ain't so bad. So I don't plan on going, but I will send them a large card and thank them very much for inviting me.
That's fair. Well, I just want to thank you for joining me today. And I love our conversations. It's always enlightening, and I just enjoy speaking with you. So for all of our listeners, thank you all for tuning in as well. And definitely visit Jane Elliott's website that she shared earlier so that you can learn more and that we can continue to be educated. And so I just, again, thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you for listening, and thank you for putting up with our not being able to get these computers together, but it worked, and we got the thing done anyway, right?
We did. That's you know what? That's a good testament to what it means to just keep going. So thank you for continuing to keep going, for continuing to speak truth. And as you said, the truth will set us free. So you set those students free, and whoever listens to this, they will be set free too mentally, because they will learn that they have the power to control what they believe. So I thank you for that.
If they choose to. But you see, therein lies the rub. I chose to do what I do.
That's true.
Black women, what we call Black women, have to do it every day. They don't have a choice. They have to do it to survive in this racist society. I don't have to do it, but now that I've done it 55 years ago, there's no way I can stop doing it, because that is what will make the difference between people regarding one another as human beings and as equal human beings who deserve equitable treatment under the law, or people who are below or above them. I'm not below anyone and I'm not above anyone, but thank you very much. I appreciate being asked.
Amen to that, and thank you.
No, not amen, not amen.
You're going to say a woman. I knew it. I was like, wait, that's coming. Well, thank you all again for tuning in. This is Dr. Jane Elliott and Tomeria Jordan signing off.